welcome to the Explainer. Right this very second, there's a super sophisticated, relentless defense system operating inside your body. It's working 24/7. So today, we're going to unlock the secrets of this incredible internal fortress, your immune system. All right, so our story really starts with this one powerful idea, immunitas. It's Latin, and it literally means freedom from. And honestly, that's the perfect way to describe what our immune system does. It gives us this biological freedom from a world that is just packed with microscopic things that would love to make our bodies their new home.
But what are we talking about here? What exactly is this hostile world we're supposedly up against? What are these threats that we need to be free from?
Well, the challengers are, wow, they're incredibly diverse. I mean, you've got everything from big threats like parasitic worms, all the way down to cellular invaders like bacteria. And bacteria are no joke. They can divide every 20 minutes. Think about that. That's millions of clones in just a few hours. And then you have the really tiny stuff, like viruses, which are so small they can't even replicate by themselves. They literally have to hijack our own genetic machinery to get the job done.
So, to fight this huge range of threats, the immune system basically operates on a simple but absolutely critical two-part directive. Okay, number one, it has to flawlessly tell the difference between self, your own healthy cells, and non-self, a foreign invader. That's job one. And as soon as it spots an invader, the second part of the mission kicks in, eliminate it. Get rid of the threat fast and completely.
Now, this whole mission is carried out by two really distinct, but also deeply connected branches of our internal military.
So, on one side, you've got the innate immune system. Just think of them as the rapid reaction force. They're immediate, they're hardwired, and they're on the scene in minutes or hours. Then on the other side, you've got the adaptive system. These are the elite troops. Yeah, they're a bit slower to get going. It can take days, but their attack is super specific, totally custom-tailored to the enemy. And here's the kicker. They learn.
All right, so let's dive into that first line of defense. How does this rapid reaction force, the innate system, actually work?
Okay, so let's really picture your body as a fortress. The first line of defense, well, that's the physical walls, right? Your skin, your mucosal surfaces. Then you've got this sort of chemical moat. We're talking about things like lysozyme in your tears and saliva that can literally split bacterial walls open. And you've also got this whole cascade of proteins called the complement system, which is kind of like a bridge between spotting the enemy and taking it out.
But what happens if those walls are breached? Well, that's when this ingenious alarm system kicks in. See, our cells have these scanners called pattern recognition receptors, or PRRs for short, and they're designed to spot these universal barcodes that you find on all sorts of microbes. We call them PAMPs. It's a brilliant way for the system to reliably tell the difference between us and them. And that alarm immediately summons the innate garrison, a whole team of first responder cells. You've got your macrophages, which are basically the big eaters just patrolling the tissues. And then you have the neutrophils, the rapid response infantry. These guys are super destructive. They can even throw out these DNA nets to trap enemies. How cool is that?
And their main tactic? It's all close quarters combat. It's a process called phagocytosis, which literally means eating by the cell, and it is ruthless. It's a four-step process. They grab and engulf the microbe, they fuse it with a pocket full of nasty chemicals, they unleash this full-on biochemical assault to destroy it, and then they just digest the leftovers.
But sometimes the first responders just get overwhelmed. The invasion is too big, or maybe the enemy is just too clever. And that's when they have to do it. They have to call for backup.
And this is where our elite units, the B and T lymphocytes, finally enter the fight. Think of B cells as the weapons factories, churning out antibodies to fight threats floating around outside ourselves. And the T cells? They're the field commanders and the assassins, orchestrating the whole response and even killing our own infected cells. But here's what's so important. They can't just jump in. They actually need permission from the innate system to get activated. So these B cells, they unleash these incredible Y-shaped molecules called antibodies. And you can really think of them like precision-guided missiles. They can neutralize a threat directly, just by physically blocking it from getting into our cells. Or they can tag invaders for destruction. It's a process called opsonization, which basically paints a giant target on them for those big eater phagocytes to come find.
Now, T cells, they have a really unique problem. They're kind of blind to free-floating enemies. They actually need the threat to be presented to them. And this is done by a molecule called the MHC, which acts, well, it's like a molecular serving platter. It holds up little pieces of the invader on the cell surface so the T cell can come along, inspect it, and say, yep, that's the bad guy.
Okay, but what's really interesting about this elite system is its single most powerful feature, and it's captured perfectly by that old saying, forewarned is forearmed.
It has a memory. That's right. After defeating an enemy, the adaptive system does not forget. It keeps an archive of memory cells, basically a reserve of battle-hardened veterans from that first fight. And the result? The next time you face that exact same pathogen, the response is, well, it's dramatically faster and much, much stronger. This, right here, is the entire principle behind how vaccines work.
So you can imagine an army this complex with all these different units, well, it's going to need some pretty sophisticated infrastructure and a really clear communication network just to work properly.
So where do these cells come from? Well, they're born and trained in what we call the primary organs. Think of these as the military academies, places like your bone marrow and thymus. And once they graduate, they get deployed to the secondary organs. These are the front lines, your lymph nodes, your spleen, places where they patrol and wait to encounter the enemy.
But how do they all talk to each other? Well, it all happens through chemical signals. You have things called cytokines, which are like the chemical voice of the system, shouting out orders and dictating what kind of response is needed. And then you have chemokines, which act like homing beacons. They create this chemical trail that leads the right cells to the exact spot of the infection, coordinating the entire battle.
Okay, so the most crucial point in all of this is that this incredible, destructive power, it has to be perfectly controlled, all the time.
And this really shows us the system's greatest challenge. It's a super delicate balance of power. If you have too little response, that's an immunodeficiency. You're just left wide open to infection. But if you have too much response, if it fails to recognize self, the whole system can turn on your own body. That's what leads to autoimmune diseases. Your very survival depends on this system being powerful enough to kill, but also regulated enough to spare.
And that leaves us with one final, kind of profound thought, doesn't it? For a system that is literally designed for destruction, maybe its most critical job isn't just knowing when to attack, but knowing when not to. Mastering that fine line between friend and foe, that is the immune system's greatest and most vital secret.